Hello all you Cylon-loving cosmonauts, as always I am Cosmic, and today we're going to be reviewing Battlestar Galactica Deadlock, which is the new turn-based strategy game brought to you by Blacklag Games and published by Slytherin Limited. It is a strategy game based around the first Cylon war in Battlestar Galactica and puts you in the helm of a commander on top of the colonial fleet, and your sole job is to protect the colonies from the Cylon invasion. So the game's story, like I said, takes place in the first Cylon war. It's been about 4 years into the war. It's been deadlocked for a while. There's been no real winner on either side, and then suddenly a surprise attack from the Cylons basically destroy the colonial fleet high command on Pycon, and so Rear Admiral Lucinda Kane gets promoted to head of the fleet, and you as her commander are basically second in command, are going to basically manage the fleet. So it's your job to build up various fleets, place them strategically around the 4 colonies, make sure that things are protected, and it works in a system in terms the story itself translates into the game's mechanics very well, and I'll explain why in a moment. But it is very, in essence, the Battlestar Galactica game that we've all been waiting for a hell of a long time, and it is finally here. So the way the game works is fairly straightforward. Before you get into any combat, you have a map system whereby you position your fleet. You have to use your resources to build new ships and then get new fleets, and then you can add officers and commanders to those fleets to improve them. There's a progression system for technology. There's a progression system for officers who are assigned to a fleet, so they will level up over time, gain experience, and then their abilities and their bonuses will become more powerful as you level them up. And it is essentially about fighting off the Cylons across the galaxy, and there is a main story, so there are main story missions that progress the story. There are side quests that give you lots of resources and things like that. But then there are also basically just random encounters. So, the Cylons will actively try and take out, things like Pycon, things like Sagittarius, and all the kind of main colonies and their various respective strategic holdings. They will actively try and assault them outside of the main story. And how this affects you is that each colony pays a resource cost to the colonial fleet. Now, if they are under siege or they are repeatedly attacked with no defense from the Cylons, it will mean that resource will go down, which gives you less resources to use when it comes to building your ships and improving your technology and unlocking new blueprints for new ships and all of that. So you have to actively go out and defend the human colonies from Cylon attack. But enough about talking about all that strategic niceness about the overmap. Let's talk about the combat itself, because this is where the game gets fun in that respect. Battlestar Galactica works very similar, in fact, to the recently released Battlefleet Gothic, in the sense that if you've ever played that game, you will be right at home with Battlestar Galactica Deadlock's core mechanics, but with a slight twist. Battlefleet Gothic used a very similar system, but it was all real time, whereas Battlestar Galactica Deadlock's system is actually turn-based, and that, in my opinion, works for the better in a lot of ways. So each turn you're able to select the movement of your ships. You're able to select the various abilities that they're going to use, so if they're going to fire missiles or launch Viper squadrons, anything like that, you're able to select that, and then you hit end turn, and then it will play out as it plays out. Now, this is important because particularly movement and the positioning of your ships is absolutely crucial, because similar to Battlefleet Gothic, each ship has various unique weaponry depending on what ship class it is, and each weapon will have various firing zones, right? So for example, one of the early ships you get is only able to fire forward and backwards, but their sides are vulnerable and have no weaponry. Whereas, a Jupiter class Battlestar is going to have a 360 arc of firing range plus an armament of an absolute ton of torpedoes and missiles and nukes. So you're going to have to really play to each ship's strengths and weaknesses. Make sure that, the enemy isn't able to surprise you where you're weak, and each side of your ship has got an armor rating, and as soon as that armor rating gets obliterated, then your ship will start taking health damage. So the same goes for the enemy as well. So it's about using their weaknesses, playing to your strengths, making sure that you catch them in as much fire as possible, making sure that you get that armor rating down, trying to stay on their weak side as you've got that armor plating down. So it means that, for example, if one of your ships takes a lot of damage on the right flank, for example, then you need to be able to make sure that turn your ship around and face the enemy with your armored side versus your weak side. And when this is culminated into a battle of a dozen ships or more, things get hectic, things get crazy, and it is a joyful mess of explosions, gunfire, and kick-ass audio. I have to say, I absolutely love the combat in Battlestar Galactica Deadlock. It is just executed with a certain love of the series that I think Battlestar fans will really, really appreciate. There is a really tribute to the lore of the franchise. Cylons are going to actively hack your ships, so you need to be aware that they're going to be able to do that, and you're going to take damage to a subsystem. You are able to repair subsystems on the fly, but then each subsystem is going to affect something about your ship, whether it be navigation range, whether it be firepower, whether it be missiles, all that kind of thing. And so you're going to have to be actively fight against that. The variety in ships is fantastic. Watching Viper squadrons, face down Cylon fighters, and watching 3 Viper squadrons and a Battlestar go against 3 ships it's just hella fun. You just cannot get enough of it. If you're a big Battlestar fan, you're gonna absolutely fall in love with almost every moment in this game, because it is just so wonderful and it's so true to the franchise. I absolutely loved the audio track within the soundtrack in this game. Is just phenomenal. It is exactly like the newer series with the drums, and it is just wonderful throughout, start to finish. It's just great. It is one of those games that, as a fan of any given sci-fi franchise, you hope for, and you're never sure if you're ever going to get the game that really hits that itch for you in that regard. And Battlestar Galactica Deadlock does that from almost start to finish. It is just one of those games that is surprisingly well executed. It has a really nice visual design, it has a fantastic audio design, and it just works really, really well. If you don't like strategy games, then you're probably not going to like this. But if you do like strategy games and you love Battlestar Galactica, it is absolutely the game for you. For me, it was, if you've played Battlefield Gothic and you didn't like the real time of Battlefield Gothic's combat, and on top of that, you felt that it was a little bit hands-off, then you're going to really enjoy this, because it is very much hands-on each turn because of the turn-based system down to the detail. So you can never really just take your eye off the ball in Battlestar Galactica Deadlock, because you have to be constantly aware of your fleet's positioning, you have to be aware of what the enemy's doing, you have to be aware of your abilities, you have to be aware of your missile launcher or your torpedo cooldown. Then you're going to have to be aware of the various objectives given to you on any given map, especially if it's a main mission, because a main mission usually has multiple objectives. But even random encounters, you're going to you think you're winning, you think you're ahead, and then suddenly you get 3 new Daedalus contacts on your radar, and the enemy have sent in 3 more ships for reinforcement, and you're well engaged, so you're going to have to pull ships out and try and reinforce your line of defense and all that kind of thing. And so it's just a fantastic strategy game that I have to say there's very little wrong with this, in fact. If anything, I think it's maybe a little bit short. I mean, there's plenty of action there. You know, you're going to get, 20, 30, 40 hours out of Battlestar very easily. But for me, I wanted 100 hours, if not more. I think the progression system could have been fleshed out a little bit more. I certainly think that it would have been nice to really get down into your ships. I think it would have been nice to have some kind of morale system within a ship as well, just to add that extra element to the gameplay that would have been very Battlestar-esque in terms of crew morale and that kind of thing. I also think it would have been nice to have a couple of minor UI features that really just were quality of life and ease of use issues, really. I think that it would have been nice to have a system whereby if I didn't want to press focus fire all the time manually, and I could just select something on a drop down menu when I selected an enemy ship, it would have been really easy. That said, I loved the UI, I loved the overall visual design, loved the soundtrack, and loved the core gameplay. It all works, it all complements each other, it's fluid, it's executed to a really high standard, and it's just something that Battlestar fans are absolutely going to love. I just could not recommend this game enough. Certainly worth a buy. That is my review for Battlestar Galactica Deadlock. Thank you so much for watching and listening. Make sure you're not a Cylon, and I will see you next time.